UFC 286, Usman versus Edwards, PrizePicks breakdown. My name's Kevin Allen, aka the Geek from DFS Army, and we're gonna take a look at. I've got about 10 plays I like. We're gonna get a 6 flex play for the slate. I've got a couple core plays that we're gonna throw in there and mix in with other plays. But before we get into all that, let's just talk about what happened last week with the breakdown video. Full transparency around here. So last week we took a look at the Jan versus Dawash Willie card. And the first thing I said on the breakdown last week was Petr Yan was an absolute lock in terms of fantasy score, because we had discovered that the way PrizePicks scores fantasy points includes takedowns defended. And what I said on the video was Petr Yan, even if he's minus 220 to win, he lost. But I said, part of the deal with MMA and with breaking these down is I'm trying to skew the odds even greater than the sort of minus 160 that we get on every play. So what are we trying to do here? With every play I'm putting out, the first thing I'm trying to make sure I have at least a 55 to 58% likelihood of the scenario happening, measured against book odds for the proposition. But the second thing is I'm trying to cover as many bases as possible, because MMA is a tricky sport. People get knocked out quick. People get submitted fast. All kinds of weird things can happen in a fight that can affect the metrics. So with the Petr Yan play, the reality was, I had said on the show, I think he gets here even in a loss, because Merab is such a maniac. He's going to go for 10, 15, 20, 25 takedowns in a 5-minute fight, in a 5-round fight. And because the fight was such a high likelihood to go to decision, especially if Merab won, I figured if Petr Yan was winning, he probably gets a knockout. He scores over 106. And of course, if Merab was winning, that's a decision, 5 rounds of takedowns and takedowns defended. And that is what ended up happening. Yan wound up scoring 165 fantasy points in a loss. And that's what I'm talking about. We were winning no matter what happened. So the entire card, I had my core plays, which was Yan, Williams, and De Silva. De Silva let us down. But Yan Williams crushed for us. This was our 6-pack, so we took the L on that one. But we also did a couple of 2 plays with Yan Batista, Yan Carl Williams, Yan Silva, and we hit 2 of 3. It was a very profitable thing. I also used Petr Yan as a second piece on pretty much every tier 1 play we dropped in the DFS Army PrizePicks channel, Discord channel throughout the week. So whenever Will Lynn or Sniper is like dropping a tier 1 play, like, oh my God, grab it now, but there's only one, I just pair it up. You got to have a core play in your back pocket, so when the opportunity pops up, you know who to pair up this other opportunity with. So I've got one of those for today, and let's get right into this week's card. Let's get right into it. So this week, we've got Usman versus Edwards, part 3 in the main event. But I'm not really seeing too many plays I like specifically from the main event, but I do like a lot of other spots on this card. I'm going to go through the process and I'm going to explain why I like them and all of that here in this video. So my first spot on the card that I love is Joanne Wood over 70.5 significant strikes. Now, I gave this out again in the DFS Army Discord, in our premium Discord for PrizePicks users 2 days ago, when this was at 63.5, I believe. So a lot of my entries are with Wood over 63.5 strikes, but the concept continues to hold true even at 70.5. And hopefully when you're watching this video, it hasn't gone up to 73. People are watching. They're hammering these plays, and it is changing the numbers. But I'm going to explain why I like her. So let's take a look at JoJo's history, where we'll see that she lands almost 7 strikes per minute. She does go for takedowns on occasion, but I don't know that she's going to use too much of that here against Luana. She's not a big-time grappler or anything like that. And the and actually Luana has a decent to very good takedown defense. So the expectation here is that this fight will play out on the feet, which means we're looking at 15 minutes of striking, 7 times 15 is 105. 105. So we're well over the 70 and a half. 7 times 50. Yeah, 105. We're all over that. So what happens if an early finish happens? That's always possible. And, we just want to skew the odds in our favor as much as possible here. And when we take a look at the odds for this fight, it is minus 300. Oh, there it is. Minus 285 to go to decision. So all we really need here is a decision. And the reason I'm going with significant strikes rather than fantasy score for my girl, Jojo Wood, is because she could lose. She could lose, but I don't care. So if she loses, she's not scoring the 88 fantasy points, but she might still land 70 and a half significant strikes in a loss. So that is our core play. I'm going to call that a tier 2 spot, meaning I give this about a 75% chance of happening. You want to use that Joanne Wood play in other parlays and other lineups, not even just with MMA. So this is one we want to build around. Okay. And in my absolute favorite on this card so far. There, if I have to choose a negative to it, it's Joanne Wood is kind of old. She's 37, and there may be, just rumor that like maybe she doesn't want to fight after this fight. Maybe she's quitting. When you get to a certain age of the fighter, if they're kind of quitting, then maybe she gets knocked out or something weird happens. But she's heavily favored to win. I'm fine with this spot. Very comfortable. Like I said, I give it about a 75% chance of hitting, which puts us in the range of tier 2. Remember, tier 1 is plays where we have about an 85% chance of winning. Tier 2 about 75. I put tier 3 at about 65, and then leans are anything from 55 to 60, playable on PrizePicks, right? So next spot, Ludovic Klein over 90 and a half fantasy score. Now, I went with fantasy score on this one because I don't want to, this is the kind of fight Ludovic Klein can get a finish. These two fighters throw heat, so he could definitely win by finish early. And Ludovic Klein does go for takedowns on occasion, so I didn't want to mess with the striking prop. Now let's take a look at some of the numbers for Klein. First of all, nothing's going to jump off the page here in his fighter stats, but 3.5 strikes per minute, 1 takedown, so nothing crazy going on there. So the big number here is the inside the distance prop, which when we take a look at this fight, under 2.5 rounds, minus 170. Which means the bettors are expecting this fight to end right in the second round at some point. Now, if we take a look at how PrizePicks scores these fights, this is also really important to understand. Ludovic probably he will need a finish. I think if this fight goes to decision, he is not going to hit this number. So we're basically counting on this fight ending inside the distance. Klein being the favorite to win the fight already at minus 190, and it's minus 170 inside the distance. So I'm going to give this fight ends inside the distance minus 225. He might be able to get there if this finishes even in the third round, as long as there's a couple of takedowns or a knockdown or some other event that causes scoring to happen. So I'm pretty comfortable with this one. I'm going to put this one as borderline tier 3, give it about a 60% likelihood of hitting for us. I'm comfortable with that as part of our 6 flex play. All right, next up, we've got CLD, Christian Leroy Duncan. Again, more than 94.5 fantasy score. And again, this is just a play on how what the odds look like. Dusko Todorovic, his opponent, is just always getting finished. He's known to be very, very chinny. CLD, minus 220 to win this fight. So they're giving him solid odds to win. He needs to win, but he also needs to win probably inside the distance in order for this to hit. Again, fight ends inside the distance is a massive minus 350. Under 2.5 rounds is a massive minus 270. So if these odds are wrong, we should just be betting the overs anyway and getting, plus 200. So if you think the odds are wrong, that's great. But then you can bet the inside the distance. But the most important one is Leroy Duncan here, CLD, inside the distance, minus 135. So odds are skewed in our favor that Leroy Duncan, CLD, as I like to call him, will finish and win this fight inside the distance. If that does happen, he should have enough in him to produce a score, to produce that fantasy score. Again, keeping in mind, it's really important to understand that PrizePicks scoring really, really values an early finish. So you've got to finish it, 75 points for a second round finish, 50 for a third rounder. We might need a second rounder. If it goes to the third round, we'll need a knockdown along the way. But I like that spot, and I do like him to get the finish. Again, continuing on, this one I'm actually even more confident in because we're going to get those beautiful takedown defended points here from Jack Shore. Jack Shore is taking on Makwan Amirkhani. And the prop here is more than 100.5 fantasy score. Now, again, Jack Shore, let's take a look at the odds for Jack Shore here. And you'll see that Shore is a massive minus 485 favorite to win this fight. Okay. All right. We started there. We're going to win the fight, probably, right? Makwan Amirkhani, what is he? Makwan Amirkhani is an aggressive grappler, right? So what's he going to be doing in this fight? He's going to be going for takedown after takedown after takedown. What did we talk about on the Petr Yan fight? It was that when you defend takedowns on PrizePicks, you're getting 3 points, 3 points, 3 points. You're getting bonus points every time you defend a takedown. Now, we're doing fantasy score, so we do not want a decision. Now, this one ends inside the distance, is a solid minus 165. And let's see here. Shore inside the distance, minus 105. So, again, we're only slightly skewed to Shore winning inside the distance, but that includes the chances of Makwan winning, right? If you remove those odds, Makwan inside the distance plus 550. So you have to remove that from the whole equation. Now, Shore also goes for takedowns of his own, so he does have that path to putting up other points. And between that, him going for takedowns, and the possibility of the early finish, Makwan is definitely a fighter that's known to get tired and gas as fights go on. So it's tougher for him to last a full 3-rounder, and Shore is super tough. So again, this is a tier 3 play, not something I'm going to be pairing with other plays, but I do think that we're probably above 60% odds of Shore hitting this 100.5. Again, he's going to have to stop a few takedowns along the way, and we probably need him to win no later than the second round. So we're going to include that in our big 6 flex play, but not one to build around. As of now, my favorite build around spot, our core play, is going to remain Joanne Wood. That's the one we can go outside of MMA and just use that as your back pocket play, because she's super unlikely to get finished. And if that fight goes the full 3 rounds, it just seems very likely that she will get there. All right, so Jack Shore over 100.5. Next up, Casey O'Neill. And I really like this one. Over 71.5 significant strikes. Now, let's take a look at this fight. First, let's start with the odds. And O'Neill is taking on Jennifer Maia. O'Neill is a minus 165. I think she might lose. Like, I could see O'Neill losing this fight. Let's start there. She could lose it. Jennifer Maia is pretty tough. But what O'Neill does bring to the table is toughness. Now, let's take a look at the inside the distance prop. And this is really important. The reason I go to this every time is because, especially if we're messing with significant strikes, we want to have the odds skewed in our favor that we'll at least get the full 15 minutes worth of striking. When you don't do that, you really put yourself in a hole. So we're minus 260 to go to the distance, which is good, right? Good numbers, good odds. We like that. We need it to go the distance. And like, I think it will. Jennifer Maia is super tough. As a matter of fact, I guess she could lock up a sub, but I think, if anybody's winning inside the distance, probably Casey. Casey is a volume monster. Take a look at these strike numbers. Casey O'Neill landing 8.65 significant strikes per minute. So if we get 15 minutes of striking, assuming she keeps up with her standard pace, which, that would be crazy, but you'd be talking about over 120, maybe 130 strikes landed over the course of a 3-round fight here. We only need to get to, where are we? Where is she? 71.5. So if she just keeps with her average, we're talking about 130. Now, there could be things along the way, a takedown here, things that slow it down, and that's fine. But Maya's a good grappler as well, so I don't see too much of that in this one. Again, my biggest concern here would be O'Neal getting takedowns and just landing ground and pound strikes, and then those just not counting as significant strikes. There is one little weird quirk about MMA where, I don't know why this happens, but what counts as a significant strike isn't always consistent from card to card. I have no idea why. Sometimes when a fighter gets a takedown and is landing ground strikes, they're counted as significant strikes, and other times they're just counted as strikes, but not significant. We need significant strikes here. But like I said, with that volume, O'Neal could get here in just two rounds of stand-up striking. I expect a stand-up striking battle here. So give me Casey O'Neal. And actually, I'm going to give that one a tier 3, and probably one of the better ones to pair up. We'll do that at the end. We'll pair up O'Neal with JoJo and just do a 2-play where we'll raise up the stakes of how much we're putting in. Remember to be diligent about your bankroll and your unit size. So for me, my unit size, 1 unit for me is $20, $1,000 bankroll, and that's what I play with in order for measuring purposes. So I'll raise up my my 2-play on a play like this to probably 2.5 or 3 units on that play, and I'll show you that in a minute. All right, finally, and this is another play I really, really like. I actually kind of love this play, and that's Rafael Fiziev over 53.5 significant strikes. And again, this is a tier 3 play. I really like it. And let's go to the reasoning. Number one, when you fight Justin Gaethje, all right, it is war. You can't be complacent. You're not going to sit back, even if you're a counter striker like what Fiziev actually is. There's plenty of opportunity to counter strike because Justin is throwing volume. And I'm going to show you the volume. But first of all, it's really important to understand the over 2.5 rounds prop is minus 130. So in order to hit those significant strike numbers, we've got to have, at least 10 minutes of striking, right? At 10 minutes, if you're landing 5 strikes per minute, you're hitting about 50. So this right here, the line is saying that this fight should go potentially over 2.5 rounds. That gives us 12.5 minutes. That's plenty of time to get to 53.5. And again, in a Justin Gaethje fight, that number gets elevated. Now, there is the risk that Fiziev knocks Gaethje out or vice versa early, and it's a surprise, and that will burn this spot. Listen, things get burned. That's what happens. But the odds are in our favor. Fight ends, fight over 2.5 rounds, minus 130. So we do have over 2.5, minus 130. There we go. Fight starts round 3, minus 115. Under 2.5 rounds. I said that completely back. I'm like confusing myself here. Under 2.5 rounds. But the fight starts round 3 prop is minus 115. That gives us the 10 minutes. All right. And so there right now the odds makers are expecting a finish either towards the end of round 2 or the beginning of round 3, which is fine for what we need. Now, taking a look at the volume numbers for these two fighters, and this is where it gets interesting. So Fiziev is a 5 strikes per minute kind of a fighter, right? So he doesn't if you're dealing with his average, then you probably need the full, you need a little over 10 minutes. You need about, I'm going to say you need about 11 to 11 and a half minutes of fight time for him to get there. But here's where it gets interesting. Justin Gaethje is a wild man, and Justin lands 7.46 strikes per minute, but he also absorbs 7.85 strikes per minute. So what's happening here is, even though Fiziev isn't always, or Fiziev, however you want to pronounce it, isn't always like super high volume, Justin Gaethje gets landed on at very high volume because he presses the issue. So when you fight Justin Gaethje, you got to step up your volume. My point is, I think that we can get there. We can get to that 53 number probably in a round and a half. We might not need 2 rounds. There's no interest from either guy in any sort of grappling. So I think as long as the fight plays out, it will play out on the feet. Now, there's another way to go with this one, and I'm going to tell you why I didn't go that way. Now, I took a look at the Fiziev fantasy score prop, and it's interesting at 92.5. But here's the thing. In a striking battle over the course of 3 rounds, if this goes to decision, PrizePicks is really brutal on the score when the fight goes to decision. They lower it to 20 points for the decision bonus. So if that fight goes to decision, 3 rounds of striking at 0.6 points per strike, 60, 70, 80, you need about 125 to 135 strikes landed in a decision win to get you over this particular prop. So for me, the strikes landed proposition was a lot better than just going with fantasy score. So that does it. That's our 6-pack. Joanne Wood, Ludovic Klein, Christian, all these are all overs, more thans, a lot of more thans for me. Shore, O'Neal, significant strikes, Shore fantasy score, Fiziev, significant strikes. Boom. Let's put the entry in. I'm going to reuse these players, and I'm going to show you that how we do this secondary sort of, let's call it the core over here. And we'll do a 2.5 unit play on Joanne Wood and Casey O'Neal. Boom. Now, I continue to think that the play this week, you can continue to use Joanne Wood over 70. I liked it better when it was 63. Got to be in the Discord to get those plays when they drop. Nothing I can do about it. By the way, if you want to get into our Discord, you can. The link is in the description below. It's the DFS Army Prop Subs, $24.99. So you want to be in there because we're dropping plays nonstop. And our best plays really, really come closer to lock. Like for NBA, you never see a tier 1 or tier 2 play really in these videos at all because we're doing them hours before. And tier 1 plays especially, there you only have about a 5-minute window before those disappear. The tier 2 plays, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then they're gone. So the best plays, you're never going to see it on these videos, unfortunately, because we just can't get them out quick enough. But we're able to drop them in our Discord as soon as they hit. And like I said, everybody hammers them, and then they're gone in a hurry. So I don't care where you are or who you are or what you're doing. The best place to be is in the DFS Army Discord, the PrizePicks Premium package, where you're just getting these plays dropped to you. And it's just, we cover all the prop games. It's not just PrizePicks, of course, Underdog and No House Advantage and all those. So make sure you're in there. Link is in the description below. Good luck with UFC 286. I can't wait to watch it. My boy, Marty Usman, if you want to bet on this one, I love Usman. I love Usman by decision in the main event. So, you know, not financial advice. Do what you want, but that's who I like. Good luck this week, everybody.